Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Entrepreneurship to the Point. I'm your dedicated host for today, Azola Mzegandaba. I'm excited to be talking about the topic we're talking about today. One friend of mine usually says he has a great appreciation for history and an earnest curiosity about the future. So we're talking everything future orientated. We're talking co-working spaces, particularly the future of co-working spaces. And today we joined none other than co-founder of Workshop 17, which is a co-working space, Paul Kirsten. Good afternoon, Paul. How are you?
I'm good, Azola. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm great. Unfortunately, Paul, I think our listeners would love to see you. There you go. Fantastic. You're sporting really nice sunglasses. You're sporting really nice spectacles. On my side, I'm actually wearing spectacles I wore maybe about 10 years ago. I actually sat on my spectacles, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about co-working spaces. Paul, can you please just maybe introduce yourself, who you are, what Workshop 17 is?
Yeah, with pleasure. My name is Paul, and my passion is entrepreneurship. It is innovation and it's learning. And those three fields have been key to all my professional life. And one of the things I've done, apart from starting some other businesses, starting Workshop 17, which is a co-working space, if you would call it like that. But it's actually a space that tries to spark innovation, learning, and entrepreneurship. So we try to make a space for all of our members to come in and work, but be inspired, be stimulated to innovate, be stimulated to be successful, to share their ideas with others, so others can benefit and it becomes more for everyone. The second driver to create Workshop 17 is actually to make life easier for entrepreneurs and for all our members. So we want to create a physical environment and a community that helps people succeed so that they can focus on what they want to do. They can benefit from others in the space, but they don't have to worry about internet connections, chairs, desk, calling help desks when the internet is down. And they can be flexible in a way that they don't have to commit for long term, and they can grow or shrink, which also sometimes happens as and when they need it.
Okay. All right. No, thank you for that, Paul. You spoke about a place of innovation. You spoke about entrepreneurship. Trends along a lot of the co-working spaces, we see that majority of the people in co-working spaces are usually entrepreneurs, freelancers. We see a lot of the customer segments being that. With regards to Workshop 17, is this what you're experiencing? And what are your locations for someone who might be interested in using a co-working space? I know I've attended your co-working space, Workshop 17, in Sandton Drive. I love the space. I really love the design, really colorful, really artsy, good vibrations, lots of different people from all walks of life. So tell us a little bit maybe about your tenant demographic, and the locations in which you're in.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for the compliment. That's great to hear. It actually fits to one element why Mark Seftel, my co-founder, and I created these spaces, that we feel like an office space or workspace doesn't need to be boring. It doesn't need to look like a traditional office space. It should be inspiring. It should be a space that you feel happy to go to and that you feel like it's your space. We have 6 of those at the moment, 6 locations. We have one in Sandton, the one you spoke about on West Street, just across from the Gautrain and Mandela Square. We have one in Rosebank, which is in the fire station, just outside of Rosebank Mall. We have one at the waterfront. It's in partnership with the V&A, just up from the Design and Crafts Market in the Watershed building. We have one in Kloof Street in Cape Town. And we have also one in Paarl in the Winelands, in an old tobacco warehouse. So we try to create spaces that have character, that have personality, and that attract a wide audience. And I think that's the first part of your question. I think traditionally, co-working space was seen like startup spaces.
Yes.
And when we were looking at it, we said, well, there's actually a missing link. We believe in diversity in any which way. Social diversity, economic diversity, professional diversity, but also age and professional stage diversity. And that's why we created spaces where we hope that everyone feels at ease and comfortable, whether you're a first-time entrepreneur, very young, or you're a serial entrepreneur in your 5th business, or you're a corporate or professional. We believe in that mix because it's really great to have that mix. And we have, I think about, I don't know the latest stats, but we have about 400 different companies in our spaces, about 1,500 members. And they are from all the different industry sectors. It can be education, it can be production, it can be marketing, it's IT, there's fintech. And I think the diversity really helps. The idea that we had is, can we create a community that's big enough that when you're part of it and you need something, the chance is very high that someone else can help you. So if you have a question, you're part of Workshop 17, there should be another member that you can, almost on the tip of your fingers, that you can reach quite easily and have a chat and see if they can help you. It can be a member in your space, but it can also be a member in other spaces. The other part is that we always wanted to be attractive for corporates also, because we saw quite a big gap between the smaller businesses and the corporate sector. And how do smaller businesses get into corporates as clients, which is often a whole journey. That is one of the reasons why we do have quite a bit of eventing space, which is not pumping at the moment in this COVID crisis, but it was pumping before. And that brings in a lot of corporates and a lot of people outside of our membership, which is, if a corporate exco has a 2-day strategy session here, and they had coffee in the bar, they can meet a startup entrepreneur and start a chat, and the other way around. And in that case, we hope to give entrepreneurs more access to market and opportunities and possible clients. The other part of eventing is that we work with network and ecosystem players like Property Point, who support entrepreneurs. So we'd like to have Property Point, Simodisa, Heavy Chef, the Hookup Dinner, and Startup Grind and others in our community, because they can provide value add to our members, whether it's been individual or through sessions like this one, to learning programs or just to networking. And I think that is what we try to achieve, like this fertile ground for people to be themselves, not lose themselves, but have access to everything that could help them further their success.
All right, no, fantastic. You spoke about, like, a little bit about your tenant demographic, particularly with regards to large corporates holding your events. One of the dying questions I have is that with regards to your tenant leasing or your occupancy, are all tenants required to have like a contract, or do you work on a basis where you can have a prepaid arrangement? Let's say I am Azola, I'm owning my own business, and I don't want to have a space like, for a long term or even short term, but I just really want to hire out a boardroom in a really nice area next to the Gautrain, be able to meet with other people that I'm working with. Is there a possibility of prepaid, or is it just looking at a contract?
Yes, it is there's a possibility to prepaid. So you just come in, you can book your meeting room for the hour and leave. That's your only engagement that's possible. You can even just come into one of our cafes and have a lunch there or have a coffee. So you don't have to be a member even to come. Or you don't even have to pay for a room to come into one of our spaces. There's public cafes in almost all our spaces that everyone can tap into. But also, your question also leads into the changes that we need to make as a space provider in this COVID era, and the changes that COVID brings in the way people see space and use space. And one of the things that we've just launched a few weeks ago is what we call Flexi Connect. It is like airtime, but then for space. Like you have airtime for your phone, with Flexi Connect, you buy some credits, and they're valid for 3 months. And when you come in, you can book your parking spot with the credits. You can book a meeting room. You can book an office for the day. You can put a hot desk. You can even order coffee with your credits. So it's almost like an internal currency that gives you airtime to use very, very flexibly, which is really needed in this time. And it's also what people want more and more. You want facilities when you need it. You don't want to be stuck in long-term contracts, heavy fixed costs.
Definitely.
You don't need it.
Yeah, we actually have seen similar, insights from our entrepreneurs being an incubator as well. Like the businesses I work with, a lot of them have, been moving towards like, these type of spaces, like, just to avoid the heavy overhead or operational line item of like renting. So I share your sentiments 100% with what you're saying. I'd like just to remind our listeners that we are open to questions on our chat box. Please feel free to ask any questions at any time. We would like the session to be very engaging and, informative as we intend to. And speaking about that, we've got a question here from one of our listeners, Zanele Sigano. She's saying she's from Pretoria, and she's asking, are we seeing moves from big corporates during these times of COVID? Are they moving towards spaces like Workshop 17? Are you seeing some of that? Is it coming through, or is it still too early to tell?
Yeah, look, it's still early, but we're seeing it already. And what COVID has done is actually, I think it's the biggest remote working experiment that the world has seen. From the one day to the next, we were all bound to work at home. And it actually really changes the pattern, especially for the more traditional corporates that now find their workforce working remotely and seeing how demand and finding out that that actually works quite well, and that people love the fact that they don't have to sit in traffic 1.5 hours in the morning and 1.5 hours in the afternoon. So they're looking at, and we've seen the requests coming in with us. How do we support our remote workforce? Not so much on how do we control them, but how can we support them? Because not everyone was prepared. Not everyone has stable internet or study at home. Many people compete on the kitchen table with the kids doing homeschooling, cooking in the meantime, and doing a meeting for work. And people miss the social contact that an office, or especially an environment like Workshop 17, brings. We've always had corporate, and I think our pitch to corporate was your innovation teams, your business development teams, your marketing. They shouldn't sit at your head office. They should actually sit in an environment like Workshop 17, where they can interact with young and innovative businesses and see what is happening and be inspired by them and learn. So we've always had some of the big financial institutions had, for instance, 80 to 100 desks with us that are where the innovation teams are working in an environment like Workshop 17. But we're seeing more and more requests come in from corporates who are saying, well, where are your locations? And can you offer locations close to where our people live so they don't have to come in every day, but they have a professional workspace close to their home? That is certainly a trend. So if you would summarize the trend, the workspace is not one location anymore. It's not your office, but it's actually the combination of your home, a Workshop 17 or a shared location or a flexible location, and the head office and everything in between. And so it becomes fluid. And what we are doing as Workshop 17 is to look at how can we support you at home? How can we bring Workshop 17 to the home? How can we support you in our locations? But how can we also support you in your head office? Because now corporates are looking at the head office and not seeing everyone coming in every day anymore. And only 1/3 of the people, because they need distancing, that your densities cannot be the same. But how do you manage now your facilities as almost like a flexible workspace? And that is where we've been having our experience and our systems. But most corporates have never done it. So it's a big change, and I think it's a good change also for entrepreneurs.
Yes, no, definitely. I can see exactly what you mean by, corporates being in a space where there's also younger people and market access, and just forming of the synergies you spoke about earlier. Now that we're here, Paul, now that the last question from our listener has led us to speaking about COVID, I think any conversation right now, when you are speaking about business, will mention COVID. And particularly because like co-working spaces were started primarily for startups, you know, or freelancers, as we have talked about earlier in our discussion. What changes as an organization, as Workshop 17, have you seen? Have you seen some of your employers, not your employers, your tenants, move out of the space? What type of trends are you seeing? Are you seeing that because like we're now quite deep into the lockdown? We started on the 27th of March. I remember earlier on when the lockdown started, I was reading an article about WeWork, and that WeWork in New York is absolutely quiet. There's no one in the space. So with Workshop 17, what are the changes? Are there people in the space right now? And how have the tenants been reacting to the new normal, as it's so called?
Yeah, I think we're still trying to understand the new normal, and everyone's still trying to find their feet. But the first month was almost like a no man land. So no one really knew what it would be, how long it would be. So our first focus was supporting our members that are in financial difficulties, that saw their revenue go down, like we also. But we felt like we're in this together. So even though they're a contract, what can we do to support our members who are in financial difficulties? Can we give them relief? Can we help them? That's what we've done, and we're still doing where needed. The second one was really looking at how can we keep connected to our members. And we've launched our own meeting platform, not Zoom, but it's called meetw17.world. Anyone can use it. You don't have to be a member. Just go meetw17.world. It's completely free. It's locally hosted, and it's fully encrypted, and nothing will be recorded. So we don't need to have a kind of a safe environment that is free. So we set that up. And then when we started opening, obviously it was how to create safety. We set up our spaces with social distancing. We've put sanitizing, everything that everyone else also needs to put in place. We try to go the extra mile and saying, well, going to Workshop 17 is probably much safer than going to the supermarket. We knew that many members said we would love to come back. But the reality when you look at our spaces is that only 20% of our members is in at the moment.
Okay.
And people have a different rhythm. You come in, I think like your team, you don't come in every day. You come in a day, you come in for half a day, you come in to meet people. So you don't come in as a routine to get your work done. That's what you do at home. But you come in to meet some others, to have a change of environment, to have some other inspiration, and to be a social human being like we all are.
Yes, no, definitely.
Just love to speak to someone else, not about who's cooking tonight and what's for dinner and who will clean up and who's taking the homeschooling today. To have a professional conversation, and our spaces still offer that. So that is the third one. And the next one is actually feeling like in this time of uncertainty, people don't want to commit. And that's why the Flexi Connect, the one we spoke about, came about, that you have airtime. So we say, well, we understand you don't want to commit. So use it flexible. Buy airtime, come in any which time. And the other thing that's interesting is that we've seen a real need for working close to home. And it's something that we always said as Workshop 17. It's just a pity that people spend so much of their lives in traffic jams or in transport. And it takes 2 hours of the day or even more. That's time away from working or living at home. We are looking as Workshop 17 to extend our network in locations to offer workspaces where people don't have to travel and don't have to go into a city center. And that is something we're seeing now, is that, and also if you look at international research, people don't want to go into Sandton that easily. If you are in the suburbs in the Western Cape, they don't want to drive into the city. We see, for instance, our PAR location, which is a smaller location with less members, has, in percentage-wise, the most members coming in, because they can drive 5 or 10 minutes, be there. They don't have to go into what they see like a busy center, and it feels much more safe. So the pattern of use is changing, and we are adapting to it. We see also companies getting rid of their offices and saying, well, actually, we are a 15-man team. we used to have our own office with 200 square meters, but actually we're canceling our lease. And people are happy to work at home, but we need to still build culture. We need to still build togetherness. So we want to come in maybe once or twice a week. Can we have an office for the day, 4 days a month, instead of an office full-time for the month? So flexibility is taken to the next level. It's not flexibility to not have a 5-year lease, but it's actually flexibility saying we are 15 people. We need 1 day a week an office. We need smaller teams and individuals to come in as and when they need it. We need to meet clients in a professional meeting room. That will be our package. And that's a completely different solution. And I think in that sense, if you look at co-working, maybe co-working is not the real term anymore. It's real flexibility. People want flexibility to adapt to the new patterns of working that have emerged in the crisis.
Cool. No, definitely, definitely. You mentioned quite a few things there. Like one of them is like, just connecting with people and networking. Personally, myself, like anyone who knows me, anyone who's seen me at Workshop 17 in Sandton knows like I've got a very effervescent personality. I really love like, engaging with different people from different organizations. It allows me to keep abreast with what's happening in the market, what's happening in different industries, and just being able to connect. And I think that's one thing, like which will still hold post COVID. And the other thing that you mentioned is that, during this time, a lot of people don't want to commit. And it reminds me of an old finance proverb that really in times of uncertainty, you want to underinvest, because if I was a small business owner, like, I'd also be thinking about counting the coins and seeing where can I save. And I think for certain people, this has led them to start thinking, do I really need office space? We've seen the hot desking phenomena in the consulting space over several years, and now it's entering into like more traditional workspaces, and employers are now seeing that actually we can work, remotely. But on the other hand, when I talk to some of employees or my colleagues or even friends, like I've heard that a lot of people are feeling, well, from an employee perspective, that given like the remote working space, like a lot of employers have led to micromanagement. So which like presupposes that a lot of employers aren't comfortable with the remote working space. So I don't know, like if you guys are looking at stuff like that, because for me, it means that like post COVID, like a lot of employers would want their employees at work, like so that they can be able to, monitor employees, be able to, make sure that productivity is high. So with that being said, do you believe that whenever COVID ends or like subsides quite substantially, will co-working spaces be negatively affected? Because I hear you operating at 20%, as you said. So where do you see like an organization like Workshop 17 in 2021?
A lot of elements that you touch on. Let me first touch on the monitoring and the productivity part. And it's interesting to look at the research that's been done internationally, and there's a reality and a perception. And lots of management feels like if people are in our space, I can check and control them. And when they're in the office, they're productive. And when they're at home, they will be distracted. When you talk to people, they say, actually, I'm much more productive at home and I can concentrate much better because I'm not interrupted all the time in office and with meetings to be drawn into. So there is a kind of a disconnect between perception and reality in terms of productivity. The other part is that people struggle with separating work and private life at home, and that the work life creeps in many more hours. So there is it's not said that people working from home and working remotely are less productive.
Yeah.
But I do think there is a shift that people need to make, and leaders and managers need to make, and to not look at hours that people are sitting at a desk, but looking at what is the productivity and how do I support my teams to be as productive as they can be, while also living the life they want to live. And I think that is one element that Workshop 17 always wanted to be in a space, is that it should be a space where living and working go together, that you feel alive when you're at the office. And you don't feel like I'm going home to live again. Because at the office, I'm a machine.
Yes.
Then more to the future of co-working and flexible office. I think, and also internationally, the research, I think in the long term, this is going to stay, and it's actually going to widen. Even before COVID, the flexible office and co-working space was only 1 to 2% of the complete office pie. And that is going to grow quite considerably. Also, the mix of remote working, work at home, and work in an office, that will stay. So these arrangements will stay. And I think in that sense, in the longer term, flexible workspace solutions that actually enable people to work from home, work at a Workshop 17 or flexible location, or even make companies not needing to have their own office, but actually have their own office with their own identity in a building like 138 West Street, where we are, and work with our landlord Growth Point to actually create that building as a hub, as a whole, where people have either a floor or a small office or anything in between. So that fluidity, that's here to stay. The challenge is obviously to see how do we get through these coming 6 months where occupancy is down. Having said that, there's a kind of a paradox here that people are still signing up for their offices, but they're not coming in, or they're coming in less time. But they are having an office, but maybe smaller than they had before. A team of 20 will have the office for 5 people, which will be their business address, because they need a foothold, they need a place, or just the address where everything's come together, where you can meet and where you can call it your home for your business. That is still happening. So we have more members than people are coming in, and we have more occupancy than you will see every day in space. But people are looking at using it differently.
Cool. Wow, that's actually interesting. It reminds me of, like similar to the gym model, or working out or training centers. Like a lot of those organizations like your Virgin Actives, your Planet Fitness, generally like have membership which is way above their capacity, because like people sign up but they don't come in. So I see like a little bit of similarities there. But speaking about that, you're seeing people still sign up, it makes me think about like some research I've been looking at regarding co-working spaces. Currently, co-working spaces are internationally, it's said to increase by 158% from 2020 to 2024. So we're looking at about a double increase in the amount of occupancy internationally. And the study I was looking at is from Co-working Resources, and they anticipate that about 77% of co-working spaces or co-working space organizations were looking to expand and are looking to expand in terms of locations. Some of them, about 38% of that group is looking at 2 to 3 more locations. Do you share the sentiments of that study, or do you feel it's a bit off given what is happening right now?
Look, I think it's true, and it's actually people preparing for the next phase after 2021. We, for instance, are being approached quite a lot by property companies who are seeing new kind of requests coming to them and saying, well, people want to renew, but for a smaller space. And they want to actually be able to tap into some shared resources. And they have workforce in different areas of the country, and they say, well, if they travel, can you offer them a workspace closer to their home or where they're traveling to? And that is not traditionally something that property companies and landlords can offer. So what you're seeing now is partnerships between companies like ours and landlords to activate spaces and to actually offer a hybrid form that is somewhere between the traditional leases and the full-on flexible co-working offer, which would be a white box space which is smaller than they used to have, but able to tap into different locations and shared facilities like meeting rooms, conference facilities, coffee shops, bars, tapping into the internet facilities that we have, and able to, if you have a laptop, you can log into any one of locations with your same credentials. You don't have to set something up think that kind of flexibility any client is demanding, and that demand will only stay and grow. And I think that's where you see the need for and the possibility for co-working operators to grow, not only in the traditional market, but actually to grow as partners of property companies to activate buildings in a different way than they used to be.
Okay, all right. No, thank you for that, Paul. One thing I just want to remind our listeners that Paul and I have been speaking, just the two of us. Like I'm seeing the listeners and the audience. I can see like there are participants within the call, but I see there's not much questions from the chat group. We've only had one question, and we like to keep these engagements, you know, really informative, really engaging. And please do feel free to ask us any questions. Paul's here to answer anything. You know, if we have entrepreneurs, if you have a question as an entrepreneur, as a person who's in a co-working space, please feel free, please use this time to chat and engage with us. Please follow us on our Instagram page, ETTP, as well as Twitter, including LinkedIn. As I said earlier on, we're a platform that informs, inspires, and equips. Today, we are joined by Paul from Workshop 17, which is a co-working space, and he's been speaking and reiterating the term that it's more flexible spaces. Even for me right now, I'm thinking like, you know, I need to take out the word co-working space in my mouth, but like looking at it more at a flexible point of view. So Paul, looking at the operational model of like a flexible working space, you talk about your landlord. With regards to landlords, you generally, as a business, will have long-term contracts with your landlord, whereas with your tenants, you'll have short-term contracts with the people occupying the space. Have you found that that disconnect has affected your cash flow in some sort of way, or has there not been like much evidence of that right now?
Sure, it has. I think it is the major risk that our business was facing, and many in our industry. If you've seen all the publications about WeWork in the past, that was seen as the major vulnerability, which comes to a surface very quickly in a crisis like the crisis we're in now. So if we weren't able to renegotiate with our landlords, we would have not been able to survive. So to be very frank, we were also looking to survive as a business, and we needed to rearrange with our landlords the way forward. And in the last question, I spoke about partnerships. So we're moving from a landlord-tenant situation to a partnership situation where we have a joint interest in activating the space and having as much people in the space as the capacity allows, so that the space flourishes, but also financially becomes very viable. And you will see ourselves now moving from leases to management agreements. And for those who know how hotel business works, is most hotels run on a management agreement, where the hotel is owned by an investor or by the landlord, and the company designs and operates the hotel according to a formula, and actually operated on behalf of the landlord to make sure the landlord has enough income from it. And that is the way we're going, which makes us much more a management, design, build, and management company, which is where our strength is, and less an asset company. Because where a landlord has fixed assets like the building I'm in, that stays, but an operator has movable assets like furniture, which depreciates. So investing in depreciating furniture on a long-term commitment is a risky business. But together partnering with a landlord to make a space attractive and make it a go-to space that becomes, so you reduce vacancies, becomes a partnership which is strong. And I think that's where we're going.
Oh, fantastic. No, thank you so much for that, Paul. On that note, at Entrepreneurship to the Point, we like to keep things short and sweet. We like to keep them to the point. So Paul, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to engage with us. Like I've learned a lot today. I've moved my terminology from co-working spaces to flexible spaces. I've moved my terminology from leases to management agreements. So thank you so much for taking the time to engage with us. If you have any parting words that you'd like to say to our listeners, this is a great time to do just that.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure. And anyone who listens who just wants to experience it, just come visit one of our locations. We'll happily host you just so you can experience it and make your own impressions of what it is and what it's like.
Cool, fantastic. Thank you so much, Paul from Workshop 17. You can Google them online, Workshop 17. As he said, they have 6 locations across the country. My name is Azola Mzegandaba, the one with the effervescent personality, the host with the most. Those that really, really know me, they call me the Joy of Jazz. Thank you so much for tuning into Entrepreneurship to the Point.